The dust cloud on the horizon was the first sign of change in Fairview, a small, forgotten town in New Mexico Territory, 1876. Felicity Blackburn clutched her father's letter to her chest, the paper worn from countless readings, as she watched the approaching stagecoach that would deliver her to a new life, one she never wanted but desperately needed. Final stop, Fairview. The driver called, his voice gruff from years of shouting over thundering hooves and creaking wheels. Felicity stepped down from the stagecoach, her eastern boots immediately coated with western dust. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the town's single main street, where weathered buildings stood like tired sentinels against the expansive sky. She adjusted her hat, an elegant thing that had no place in this rugged landscape, and gathered her courage along with her bags. "Miss, you need some help with those." The stagecoach driver gestured to her trunk. "No, thank you, I can manage," she said, though it was mostly a lie. Felicity had never managed anything in her life, having grown up in Boston society where everything was done for her. But that life had evaporated when her father's investments failed, leaving her with nothing but distant relatives offering reluctant charity. Her aunt and uncle owned the town's only hotel, and they had agreed to take her in not out of familial love, but because they needed an extra pair of hands. Free labor in exchange for room and board. Felicity had never worked a day in her life, but pride and necessity were powerful motivators. She made her way down the dusty street, attracting curious stares from locals not accustomed to seeing such finery in their humble town. The hotel wasn't difficult to find, a 2-story wooden structure with a faded sign reading Fairview Inn swinging in the hot breeze. "You must be Felicity." A thin woman with sharp features stood at the entrance, arms crossed. Aunt Martha, Felicity presumed, though they had never met. "You're late." Stage was supposed to arrive at noon. "There was a delay in Santa Fe," Felicity explained, trying to keep the fatigue from her voice. "Well, delays won't be tolerated here. We run a tight ship." Martha turned and walked inside without offering to help with the bags. "Your room is upstairs, last door on the left. Get settled and come down. There's work to be done before supper." Felicity's room was little more than a closet with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a small window overlooking the back alley. She sat on the edge of the bed, allowing herself one moment of self-pity before squaring her shoulders. This was her life now, and she would face it with dignity, if not enthusiasm. Downstairs, Martha put her to work immediately, showing her how to check in guests, clean rooms, and help in the kitchen. By sunset, Felicity's hands were raw and her back ached, but she refused to complain. This was just the first day of many, and weakness wouldn't serve her here. After a sparse dinner of beans and cornbread, Uncle Herbert, a quiet man with a perpetual frown, cleared his throat. "Saturday's the town dance. We expect you to help serve refreshments." A dance. It was the first thing that had piqued Felicity's interest since arriving. "Don't get excited," Martha sniffed. "It's nothing like your fancy Boston parties, just locals stomping around to fiddle music." But Felicity couldn't help the small flutter of excitement. In Boston, she had excelled at dancing, one of the few accomplishments her father had been genuinely proud of. Perhaps this would be a chance to feel like herself again, to reclaim a small piece of the life she'd lost. The week passed in a blur of new routines and tasks. Felicity learned to make beds with military precision, to scrub floors until her knuckles bled, and to smile at rude guests who looked down on her diminished station. Each night, she fell into bed exhausted, but thoughts of the upcoming dance sustained her. Saturday arrived with a festive air. The town hall, a large wooden building at the end of Main Street, was transformed with paper lanterns and wildflowers. Felicity helped Martha carry trays of refreshments, stealing glances at the townspeople in their best attire. The women wore calico dresses with ribbons in their hair, while the men had traded work clothes for clean shirts and sometimes even jackets. As the fiddles began to play, couples formed on the dance floor. Felicity watched longingly, tapping her foot to the lively music. "Go on then," Martha said unexpectedly. "The refreshment table is set up. You can have one dance before we serve the supper." Felicity didn't need to be told twice. She smoothed her dress, the simplest one she'd brought from Boston, though still finer than most in the room, and approached the edge of the dance floor. The music was different from what she was used to, more energetic and less structured, but the rhythm called to her. A young farmer asked her to dance, and she accepted with a smile, stepping onto the floor with confidence. But as the music started, Felicity quickly realized this wasn't the formal quadrille or waltz she was familiar with. The steps were completely different, wild, improvisational, and uninhibited. She tried to follow her partner's lead, but her feet betrayed her, stumbling and stepping on his toes. Around her, the other dancers moved with practiced ease, their bodies swaying naturally to the folk melody. Felicity's face burned with embarrassment as she heard snickers from onlookers. "Look at the city girl thinking she can dance like us," someone remarked, loud enough for her to hear. "Reckon she's better at serving drinks," another voice added, followed by laughter. Humiliated, Felicity stepped away from her partner, mumbling an apology. The laughter grew louder, and she wanted nothing more than to disappear, to run back to the small room that was now her home and hide. Then, a strong hand caught her elbow. "Excuse me, miss, may I have this dance?" She looked up into the most striking blue eyes she'd ever seen, set in a sun-weathered face beneath a mop of sandy hair. The man was tall, dressed in a clean white shirt and dark vest, with the unmistakable bow-legged stance of a horseman. "I don't think that's wise," she said softly. "As you can see, I'm not familiar with your dances." His smile was kind without a hint of mockery. "Just step where I step, you'll catch on quick enough." Against her better judgment, Felicity allowed him to lead her back onto the floor. The fiddles struck up a new tune, slightly slower than before. "I'm Noah," he said, positioning her hands correctly. "Noah Nicholson, Felicity Blackburn. The hotel folks' niece. Heard you arrived from back east. News travels fast," she commented, focusing on his feet. "In a town this size, sneezing in the morning means everyone's offering you remedies by noon." His laugh was as warm as his eyes. "Now just follow me. Right foot here," he demonstrated, and she mirrored him. "Left foot back. Good, now side step." Noah guided her through the basic steps, his hand firm but gentle on her back. The secret is to feel the music, not think about it too much. Gradually, Felicity began to get the hang of it. The steps weren't so different from what she knew, just less formal, more connected to the earth. When she finally looked up from her feet to Noah's face, his smile broadened. "There you go. You're dancing Western now," and she was. It wasn't perfect, she still missed steps occasionally, but she was moving with the music rather than against it. A few people still watched with amusement, but others nodded approvingly. Martha, standing by the refreshment table, raised an eyebrow but didn't call her back to work. When the dance ended, Felicity was breathless but elated. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "That was very kind of you." "My pleasure, Miss Blackburn." Noah tipped his hat. Perhaps another dance later. Before she could respond, Martha beckoned imperiously, and Felicity had to return to her duties. But the evening had brightened considerably. As she poured lemonade and handed out slices of apple pie, she found herself watching for glimpses of Noah among the crowd. He danced with several other women, always with the same easy grace, but occasionally his eyes would find hers, and he'd offer a small smile that made her heart beat faster. It was late when Martha finally allowed her to pack up the remaining refreshments. The crowd had thinned, with mostly older folks sitting around talking while the band played softer tunes. Felicity was placing the last of the cups into a crate when Noah appeared beside her. "I believe you owe me another dance," he said. "I'm afraid I'm working," she replied, though she couldn't keep the regret from her voice. "Seems to me you're about finished." He glanced at the nearly empty table, "and the band's playing my favorite song." Felicity hesitated, then looked to Martha, who was deep in conversation with the town's seamstress. "Just one more," she decided, placing the crate under the table. This time, the dance was slower, allowing them to talk. Noah, she learned, ran a small ranch outside town with his brother. He'd been born in Texas, but had come to New Mexico after the war, looking for a fresh start. "And you?" he asked. "What brings a Boston lady to our dusty corner of the territory?" Felicity considered deflecting the question, but found herself wanting to be honest with this man who had saved her from humiliation. "Necessity. My father lost everything in bad investments. When he passed last winter, I had nowhere to go except to relatives I'd never met. Noah's expression was sympathetic but not pitying. That takes courage, starting over in a strange place. Not courage so much as lack of options, she admitted. Don't sell yourself short. I've seen plenty of people crumble under less. The music was winding down and he slowed their steps. I hope you'll give Fairview a chance. It's not Boston, but it has its charms. Like helpful cowboys who rescue clumsy dancers, she asked with a small smile. His laugh warmed her. Exactly like that. As the music ended, he held her hand a moment longer than necessary. Will you be at church tomorrow? She nodded. Martha and Herbert had made it clear that church attendance was non-negotiable. Save me a seat, he asked. I'll try, she promised, knowing that her aunt would have strict ideas about where she should sit. As she helped clean up after the dance, Felicity found herself humming the tune they danced to. For the first time since arriving in Fairview, she felt something like hope stirring in her chest. Maybe there was a place for her here after all. Morning brought a different reality. Martha was in a foul mood, complaining that Felicity had spent too much time dancing and not enough working. The list of chores before church seemed endless, and by the time they arrived at the small white chapel, the service was already beginning. They slipped into a pew at the back, far from where Noah sat with a man who resembled him enough to be the brother he'd mentioned. Throughout the sermon, Felicity felt his eyes on her, but Martha kept her firmly by her side even after the service ended. It wasn't until they were heading back to the hotel that Noah managed to intercept them. Mrs. Blackburn, Mr. Blackburn, he greeted her aunt and uncle respectfully. Fine sermon today, wasn't it? Herbert grunted non-committally while Martha eyed him suspiciously. What can we do for you, Mr. Nicholson? I was hoping to invite Miss Felicity for a ride this afternoon, if she can be spared from her duties. His directness surprised Felicity, but she admired his forthrightness. Martha's lips thinned. My niece has responsibilities at the hotel. Sunday is as busy as any other day for us. Just for an hour or two, Noah persisted. I'd like to show her Lookout Point. On a clear day like this, you can see for miles. Herbert cleared his throat. Let the girl go, Martha. She's been working hard all week. Martha looked surprised at her husband's intervention but didn't argue. Be back before supper, she said curtly to Felicity. I'll have her back safe and sound, Noah promised, the smile returning to his eyes. An hour later, Felicity had changed into her riding skirt, thankfully one of the practical items she'd brought from Boston, and was waiting on the hotel porch. Noah arrived on horseback, leading a second horse, a gentle-looking mare. This is Daisy, he said as he helped Felicity mount. She'll treat you right. Felicity had ridden in Boston's parks, but never in open country. The freedom was exhilarating as they followed a trail leading away from town, through stands of scrub oak and past rocky outcroppings. Noah pointed out landmarks and told stories about the area, clearly proud of his adopted home. Lookout Point was a flat-topped hill overlooking the valley. They dismounted, and Noah spread a blanket on a smooth rock. From his saddlebag, he produced a small bundle of food, corn bread, jerky, and apples. It's not much, he apologized. My brother Frank's the better cook between us. It's perfect, Felicity assured him, realizing she was genuinely hungry for the simple fare. They ate as Noah pointed out his ranch in the distance, a small collection of buildings nestled in a green patch near a creek. It's not much to look at yet, he said, but we're building it up. Another few years and we'll have one of the better spreads in the county. You love it here, she observed. I do. He looked at her curiously. Do you think you could love it here, I mean? The directness of the question startled her. I don't know, it's all so different from what I'm used to. Different doesn't always mean worse, he suggested. No, but it's hard to feel at home when you're not wanted. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Noah's expression grew serious. Your aunt and uncle, Felicity sighed. They made it clear I'm there to work, not to be part of a family. I'm grateful they took me in, but it's a cold kind of gratitude, he finished for her. I understand that. When I first came here after the war, I was a stranger too. It takes time to put down roots. I suppose I'm just not sure if I should be putting down roots here at all, she admitted. Noah was quiet for a moment. Well, for what it's worth, I think Fairview would be poorer without you, even if you do need some dance lessons. His teasing smile returned. She laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "I'll have you know I was quite accomplished at dancing in Boston. I believe it. But out here we moved to a different rhythm." He stood and offered her his hand. "Speaking of which, there's no music," she protested as he pulled her to her feet. "Don't need any. The wind in the grass, the birds, that's music enough." He positioned her hands as he had the night before. "Just step where I step." And so they danced on the hilltop, with no music but the sounds of nature and their own laughter. Felicity found it easier this time, away from judging eyes, with only Noah to follow. When they finally stopped, breathless and smiling, they were standing closer than propriety would allow in town. For a moment, Felicity thought he might kiss her and was surprised to find herself hoping he would. But Noah was a gentleman. He stepped back, still holding her hands. "We should head back," he said, though his reluctance was clear. "I promised your aunt I'd have you home before supper." The ride back was quieter, both lost in their own thoughts. As they approached the town, Noah spoke up. "There's a church picnic next Sunday. Would you consider attending with me?" "I'd like that," Felicity said, knowing Martha might object but determined to stand her ground this time. Noah helped her dismount in front of the hotel, lingering a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you for the company today, Miss Blackburn." "Felicity," she corrected him. "Please call me Felicity." His smile widened. "Felicity then, I'll see you soon." She watched him ride away, a strange mixture of emotions swirling inside her. For the first time since arriving in Fairview, she wasn't counting the days until she could somehow return east. Instead, she found herself looking forward to the days ahead. The week that followed was both better and worse than the one before. Better because Felicity had something to look forward to. Worse because Martha seemed determined to work her harder than ever, as if sensing her niece's growing happiness and resenting it. "That Nicholson boy has been sniffing around here twice already," Martha complained on Thursday evening as Felicity scrubbed pots in the kitchen. "Don't get ideas above your station, girl. Cowboys don't make reliable husbands." "He only stopped by to say hello," Felicity defended, though in truth, Noah had brought her wildflowers on Tuesday and had inquired about walking her to the general store on Wednesday. HMPH. "I've seen how he looks at you. Just remember your place. You're here to work, not to court." The words stung, but Felicity bit back her retort. She needed this roof over her head, at least until she could figure out another option. And despite Martha's coldness, Felicity had begun to earn small nods of approval from the hotel guests, and even from some townspeople who had witnessed her humiliation at the dance. Mrs. Peterson, the banker's wife, had specifically requested that Felicity bring her afternoon tea. "You have a refinement that's rare out here, dear," she'd said. "It's refreshing." Such small kindnesses helped Felicity bear the long days of physical labor she wasn't accustomed to. And whenever her spirits flagged, she thought of dancing with Noah on the hilltop, and somehow found the energy to continue. By Sunday, even Martha's disapproval couldn't dampen Felicity's excitement. She wore her second-best dress, a pale blue that brought out her eyes, and arranged her hair with special care. When Noah arrived to escort her to the picnic, he looked equally polished, his usually unruly hair slicked down, his good shirt startlingly white against his tanned skin. "You look beautiful," he said simply, offering his arm. The church picnic was held in a meadow near the creek, with tables set up under the cottonwood trees. Families spread blankets on the grass, children ran and played, and the atmosphere was festive. Noah introduced Felicity to his brother Frank, a quieter version of Noah with the same kind eyes, and to what seemed like every resident of Fairview. Some still regarded her with suspicion, the Eastern girl who didn't belong, but others were welcoming, especially after Noah made it clear that she was with him. They ate fried chicken and corn on the cob, drank lemonade, and joined in simple games. When someone produced a fiddle, Noah immediately pulled Felicity to the makeshift dance area. "Just step where I step," he reminded her with a wink. This time, Felicity moved more confidently, following Noah's lead without having to watch her feet constantly. She was aware of people watching, some with surprise at her improvement, but she focused on Noah's encouraging smile. "You're a natural," he said as they spun around the clearing. I have a good teacher, she replied. They danced until Felicity was breathless, then retreated to a spot by the creek where they could talk more privately. Noah told her about his plans for the ranch, his dreams of expanding the herd and building a bigger house someday. It gets lonely out there sometimes, he admitted. Frank's good company, but he's not much of a talker, and the nearest neighbor is 3 miles away. It sounds peaceful, Felicity said, thinking of the constant noise and bustle of the hotel. It is, but there's such a thing as too much peace. He looked at her intently. I've enjoyed having someone new to talk to these past days. So have I, she said softly. You've made Fairview feel less foreign. His hand found hers, a warm, calloused palm against her softer skin. I'm glad. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities. Then Frank called Noah's name, breaking the spell. Noah squeezed her hand once before letting go. Duty calls, he said reluctantly. But I'll walk you back to the hotel later, Felicity nodded, watching as he went to help his brother with something near the picnic tables. Left alone, she wandered along the creek bank, enjoying the rare moment of solitude. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the group of young women approaching until they were right beside her. Miss Blackburn, one of them called. Felicity recognized her as Sarah Jenkins, the general store owner's daughter. We were hoping to speak with you. Felicity turned, apprehensive. These were the same girls who had laughed at her dancing failure. Yes, we noticed you dancing with Noah earlier, another girl said. This was Emma Wilson, whose father owned the livery stable. You've improved. Thank you, Felicity said cautiously. We wanted to apologize for laughing before, Sarah said, seeming genuinely contrite. It was unkind. It's all right, Felicity said, surprised by the apology. I must have looked quite ridiculous. Not ridiculous, Emma said. Just different. We don't get many Easterners here. Noah seems sweet on you, a third girl chimed in, giggling. Felicity felt her cheeks warm. We're just friends. Noah Nicholson doesn't dance with just friends the way he danced with you, Sarah said knowingly. He's the catch of the county, you know. Half the girls here have set their caps for him. Including you. Felicity couldn't help asking. Sarah laughed. Including me once upon a time. But he never looked at me the way he looks at you, Emma nodded. We thought you should know, some of us are having a quilting circle on Tuesday evenings. We'd love for you to join us if your aunt will spare you. The invitation touched Felicity deeply. It was the first real offer of friendship she'd received. I'd like that very much, she said sincerely. The girls moved on, leaving Felicity to ponder this unexpected development. She had come to the picnic as Noah's guest, but perhaps she was beginning to find her own place in Fairview. When Noah returned to her side, she was still smiling. You look happy, he observed. Having a good time? I am, she said and meant it. Very much so. The sun was beginning to set when Noah walked her back to the hotel. The streets of Fairview were quiet, most residents still at the picnic or already settled in for the evening. They walked slowly, neither in a hurry to end the day. Felicity, Noah said as they approached the hotel, there's a cattle drive starting next week. Frank and I will be taking our herd to the railhead in Dodge City. Her heart sank. How long will you be gone? 3 weeks, maybe a month. He stopped walking, turning to face her. I wanted to ask, will you write to me? I can arrange to have letters forwarded. Of course, she said without hesitation. I'd like that. Relief crossed his features. Good, that's good. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket. I have something for you. It's not much, but he pressed a small object into her palm. It was a carved wooden pendant on a leather cord, shaped like a dancing figure. The craftsmanship was simple but beautiful. I made it, he said, suddenly shy. To remind you to keep dancing, even when I'm not here to show you the steps. Tears pricked at Felicity's eyes. No one had given her such a thoughtful gift in a long time. It's beautiful, she whispered. Thank you. Noah helped her fasten it around her neck, his fingers brushing the sensitive skin at her nape. When she looked up at him, his expression was so tender that it took her breath away. May I call on you properly when I return? He asked. With your aunt and uncle's permission, Felicity knew what he was really asking permission to court her openly. Yes, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I'd like that very much. Noah's smile was brilliant in the gathering twilight. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her cheek, his lips lingering just a moment longer than propriety allowed. "Good night, Felicity Blackburn," he said softly. "Dream of dancing." The weeks of Noah's absence were both harder and easier than Felicity had anticipated. Harder because she missed his company, his ready smile, and the way he made her feel like she belonged. Easier because Martha, seeming to sense her niece's growing attachment to the young rancher, had eased up on her criticism, and even allowed her Tuesday evenings free for the quilting circle. The other young women welcomed Felicity warmly, teaching her the basics of quilting at which she proved surprisingly adept, and including her in their gossip and laughter. Through them, she began to understand Fairview better, its history, its families, its rhythms. She learned that Noah was respected not just for his good looks and charm, but for his integrity and hard work. He and Frank had arrived with almost nothing and had built their ranch through sheer determination. "Noah saved my little brother when he fell into the creek last spring," Emma told her one evening as they stitched. "Jumped right in without thinking about himself. That's the kind of man he is." Each new story made Felicity's heart grow fonder, even as she reminded herself that their relationship was still new and uncertain. She wrote to Noah twice a week, carefully composed letters describing her days at the hotel, her new friendships, and how she was practicing her dancing in the privacy of her room. His replies came less frequently, written in a bold, somewhat untidy hand on whatever paper he could find. He told her about the trail, the challenges of moving hundreds of cattle across open country, and how he thought of her under the stars at night. His words were simple but sincere, and Felicity read each letter until the paper was worn at the creases. By the third week, she had settled into something of a routine. Mornings and afternoons were spent working at the hotel, but she had carved out small pockets of time for herself, an hour of reading before bed, Tuesday evenings with the quilting circle, Sunday afternoons when she would walk to Lookout Point alone, remembering her dance with Noah. It was on one such Sunday, nearly a month after Noah's departure, that Felicity returned to the hotel to find a stranger waiting in the lobby. He was expensively dressed in an Eastern suit that looked out of place in Fairview, his beard neatly trimmed, his hat of the latest Boston fashion. "Felicity?" he asked, rising as she entered. "Felicity Blackburn?" She nodded, puzzled. "Yes, I'm Felicity." The man smiled, revealing perfect teeth. "My name is James Harrington. I was a friend of your father's." Felicity's heart skipped a beat. Her father had many business associates, but few she would have called friends. "Mr. Harrington, what brings you to Fairview?" "You do, my dear." He gestured to a chair. "Might we sit? I have some news that I think will interest you greatly." Martha appeared from the back room, eyeing the stranger with a mixture of suspicion and respect for his obvious wealth. "Can I bring you some coffee, sir?" "That would be most kind," Harrington said smoothly. When Martha had gone, he turned back to Felicity. "I've been looking for you for some time. After your father's passing, certain investments he made began to show returns, quite substantial returns." Felicity's hands trembled slightly in her lap. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, Miss Blackburn, that you are not destitute as you believed. There is a significant sum of money, your inheritance, waiting for you in Boston. I've come to bring you home." The words hung in the air between them. Home, Boston, the life she had lost and mourned. It was being offered back to her like a dream come true. How significant? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life, to take your rightful place in society again." Harrington reached into his coat and produced several official-looking documents. "These are the papers detailing the investments and returns." "Everything is in order, I assure you." Felicity took the papers with numb fingers, scanning the figures. The sum was indeed substantial, more than enough to restore her to her former life, perhaps even better than before. Why did it take so long for this to come to light? She asked, suspicion flickering through her shock. "Your father was involved in some speculative ventures," Harrington explained. "Railroads in the West, mining operations. They were considered high risk at the time, but some have paid off handsomely." It took time for the returns to be realized and for the estate to be properly settled. It was plausible enough, Felicity supposed. Her father had always been secretive about his business dealings. "I've booked passage for us on the eastbound stage that leaves tomorrow," Harrington continued. "We can be in Santa Fe by the end of the week, and from there, take the train east. You can be back in Boston before the month is out." Tomorrow, the speed of it made Felicity's head spin. Just hours ago, she had been contemplating her new life in Fairview, waiting for Noah's return, beginning to put down those roots he had spoken of. And now, "This is overwhelming," she said honestly. "Of course it is," Harrington said sympathetically. "But think of it, Felicity. You can return to civilization, to comfort, to the life you were meant to lead, no more working as a servant in this." He glanced around distastefully. Establishment. Martha returned with the coffee, hovering nearby as Felicity tried to gather her thoughts. When Felicity explained the situation, her aunt's reaction was a mixture of disbelief and thinly veiled relief. "Well, isn't that fortunate for you?" Martha said, not bothering to hide the fact that she was reading the documents over Felicity's shoulder. "Seems everything's in order." "You'll need to pack tonight," Harrington advised. "The stage leaves at dawn." Felicity nodded automatically, her mind still struggling to process this sudden change in her circumstances. "Yes, of course. If you'll excuse me, I should start preparing." In her small room, Felicity sat on the bed, the inheritance papers spread before her. It was real. She could go home, reclaim her place in society, never have to scrub another floor or endure another of Martha's cutting remarks. So why wasn't she overjoyed? The wooden pendant Noah had given her seemed to grow heavy against her skin. She touched it, thinking of his promise to call on her when he returned, of the dance they had shared on the hilltop, of the letters exchanged and the growing feelings between them. Could she leave without saying goodbye? Noah and Frank were still on the cattle drive, expected back any day now, but not soon enough. If she left tomorrow, she would be gone before he returned. She could write a letter, of course. Explain the situation, thank him for his kindness, wish him well. But the thought left a hollow feeling in her chest. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. It was Herbert, looking uncomfortable as always when required to speak directly to her. "Mr. Harrington seems like a respectable gentleman," he said without preamble. "Known your father, has he?" "He says so," Felicity replied. "The documents appear legitimate." Herbert nodded. "Well, it's a stroke of luck for you, isn't it? Back to your fine life in the East." "Yes," Felicity said automatically. "A stroke of luck." "That Nicholson boy will be disappointed," Herbert remarked, surprising her. "He's been sweet on you." Felicity felt her cheeks warm. Yes, I suppose he has been." Herbert cleared his throat awkwardly. "Well, just wanted to say, you've worked hard here. Didn't think you had it in you, being raised soft like you were, but you proved me wrong." It was perhaps the closest thing to a compliment she had received from her uncle. "Thank you," she said sincerely. After he left, Felicity began packing mechanically, folding her dresses now showing signs of wear from months of use into her trunk. Each item she packed brought a memory. The blue dress she had worn to the picnic, the riding skirt from her first outing with Noah, the shawl she had worn to Quilting Circle. As darkness fell, she found herself unable to sleep, torn between two futures that had suddenly presented themselves. Boston meant comfort, security, and the familiar. Fairview meant hard work, uncertainty, and Noah. Dawn came too quickly. Harrington was waiting in the lobby, looking fresh and eager despite the early hour. The stage coach waited outside, her trunk already loaded. "Are you ready, Miss Blackburn?" Harrington asked, offering his arm. Felicity hesitated, one hand going to the wooden pendant at her throat. "Mr. Harrington, might I ask a favor? Could we delay our departure by a few days?" His brow furrowed. "Delay? Whatever for? There's someone I need to speak with before I leave." "He's expected back in town any day now." Understanding dawned in Harrington's eyes, followed by a flicker of something that might have been annoyance. "A young man, I presume? Miss Blackburn, I understand that you may have formed attachments during your time here. But surely you see that your future lies in Boston." "I just want to say goodbye properly," Felicity insisted. Martha, who had come to see them off, interjected. "The stage only comes through twice a week, Felicity. If you miss this one, you'll have to wait until Thursday." "Then I'll wait until Thursday," Felicity said, a note of defiance entering her voice. Harrington sighed. "Miss Blackburn, I have business in Santa Fe that cannot wait. I'm afraid if you don't leave with me today, you'll have to make the journey alone later." "Or not at all," Martha muttered, just loud enough to hear. The implication was clear. If Felicity didn't leave now with Harrington to escort her, she might lose this opportunity. The inheritance papers were in Harrington's possession. He was her link to reclaiming her fortune. Outside, the stagecoach driver called impatiently. "Last call. We're leaving." Felicity looked from Harrington to the waiting stage, then back to the pendant in her hand. A choice had to be made, and time had run out. "Mr. Harrington," she said finally, "I thank you for coming all this way and for bringing me this news, but I find that I need more time to consider my options." Harrington's expression hardened slightly. "Miss Blackburn, I don't think you understand. This opportunity may not present itself again. Nevertheless," Felicity said more firmly now, "I choose to stay at least until I can speak with my friend." Martha made a sound of disbelief. "You're turning down a fortune for a cowboy." "I'm postponing a decision until I have all the information I need," Felicity corrected, though in truth, she wasn't entirely sure that was all she was doing. Harrington studied her for a long moment, then nodded stiffly. "As you wish. The papers regarding your inheritance are here." He handed her an envelope. "My card is enclosed as well. When you come to your senses, you may contact me in Boston." With that, he turned and walked to the stagecoach, not looking back as it pulled away in a cloud of dust. Martha was staring at Felicity as if she had lost her mind. "You foolish, foolish girl," she said, shaking her head. "You've thrown away everything for nothing." But as Felicity watched the stagecoach disappear down the road, she wasn't so sure. The weight of the wooden pendant against her skin felt right somehow. And the thought of leaving without seeing Noah again had been unbearable. "Not for nothing," she said quietly. "For a chance." 3 more days passed with no sign of Noah. Felicity continued her duties at the hotel, aware of Martha's increased coldness and the speculative looks from townspeople who had heard about her strange decision to stay when fortune called her back east. On the 4th morning, as Felicity was sweeping the hotel porch, a rider came galloping down the main street, dust billowing behind him. It was Frank Nicholson, his horse lathered with sweat. "Doc Matthews?" he shouted, pulling up in front of the doctor's house across the street. "Doc, you there?" The doctor, a grizzled man in his 60s, emerged from his house, wiping his hands on a towel. "What's the commotion, Frank?" "It's Noah," Frank said, and Felicity's heart seemed to stop. "Got thrown from his horse yesterday when we were almost home. Hit his head bad. He's conscious but not making much sense." Felicity dropped her broom, hurrying across the street. "Frank, where is he? Is he all right?" Frank turned at her voice, his worried expression softening slightly. "Miss Felicity, he's at the ranch. I got him home, but he needs the doc." "I'll get my bag," the doctor said, disappearing back inside. "How bad is it?" Felicity asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Bad enough to scare me," Frank admitted. "He keeps drifting in and out, talking nonsense, calling for you, though." The simple statement sent a wave of emotion through her. "Me," Frank nodded. "Keeps saying he needs to get back to you, that he promised." The doctor emerged with his medical bag. "I'll take my buggy. Be there in 20 minutes. I'm coming with you," Felicity said immediately. The doctor hesitated. "Miss Blackburn, I don't think that's proper or not. I'm coming," she insisted. "If Noah's asking for me, then I should be there." Frank looked between them, then made a quick decision. "She can ride with me, Doc. My horse can carry double for that distance." Before anyone could object further, Felicity had climbed up behind Frank, holding tight to his waist as they galloped toward the Nicholson ranch. The doctor followed in his buggy, moving as quickly as the rutted road allowed. The ranch was as Noah had described it, a modest but well-built house, a large barn, and several outbuildings, all situated near a creek with cottonwoods providing shade. Under other circumstances, Felicity would have admired the peaceful setting, but now all she could think about was Noah. Frank helped her down and led her into the house, where Noah lay on a bed in the front room. His face was pale beneath his tan, a bloody bandage wrapped around his head. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow. "Noah," Felicity whispered, moving to his side. She took his hand, alarmed at how cold it felt. "Noah, I'm here." His eyelids fluttered but didn't open. "Felicity," he murmured, "dancing." "Yes, it's me." She squeezed his hand. "I'm right here." The doctor arrived, shooing Felicity aside to examine his patient. She retreated to the kitchen where Frank was putting coffee on the stove, his hands shaking slightly. "What happened?" she asked quietly. Frank ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like Noah's that it made her heart ache. "We were almost home, just a few miles out." Noah was riding point, keeping an eye on the lead steer. Something spooked the animal, a rattlesnake maybe, and it charged. Noah's horse reared and he went down hard, hit his head on a rock. But he was conscious. He was talking, on and off, mostly asking for you. Frank looked at her curiously. "He's sweet on you, Miss Felicity. Has been since that dance." "I know," she said softly. "I'm sweet on him too." They fell silent, listening to the doctor's low voice from the other room as he spoke to Noah, trying to assess his condition. "After what seemed like an eternity, doctor." Matthews joined them in the kitchen. "Well, he's got a nasty concussion," the doctor reported. "Cracked his skull, but not too severely. He needs rest, quiet, and someone to watch him for the next few days. If he stays stable and the swelling goes down, he should recover." "And if the swelling doesn't go down?" Frank asked, voicing the fear Felicity couldn't bring herself to speak. The doctor's expression was grave. "Then we'll have to consider other options. But let's not borrow trouble. He's young and strong. Good chance he'll pull through just fine." Felicity took a deep breath. "I'll stay with him." Both men looked at her in surprise. "Miss Blackburn, that wouldn't be proper," the doctor protested. "Frank will be here as chaperone," she pointed out. "And Noah needs someone to watch him. You said so yourself." "I meant his brother, or I could send the widow Jenkins out to nurse him." "Please," Felicity said firmly. "I want to help. I care about him." The doctor looked to Frank, who shrugged. "It's fine by me, Doc. Miss Felicity's right. Noah would want her here." In the end, the doctor relented, giving Felicity instructions on how to care for Noah and what signs of trouble to watch for. "I'll be back tomorrow to check on him," he promised as he prepared to leave. "Send Frank for me immediately if he gets worse." After the doctor left, Felicity sent Frank to the hotel to inform her aunt and uncle of the situation and to bring back some of her things. She knew Martha would be furious, but at that moment, she couldn't bring herself to care. Alone with Noah, she sat beside his bed, bathing his forehead with cool water as the doctor had instructed. His face was peaceful in unconsciousness, the lines of humor around his eyes relaxed. "You promised to teach me more dances," she told him softly. "So you need to get better." "I'm holding you to that promise, Noah Nicholson." As evening fell, Frank returned with a small bag of Felicity's belongings and news that surprised her. "Your aunt was fit to be tied," he reported, "but your uncle said to tell you to do what you think is right. Said to remind you that Thursday's stage leaves at noon, if that means anything to you." It meant everything. Thursday tomorrow was when the next eastbound stage would depart. Her last chance to follow Harrington to Boston, to claim her inheritance before the trail grew too cold. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Did you bring the letter I asked for?" Frank nodded, pulling an envelope from his pocket. It was the one Harrington had left, containing the details of her inheritance and his card. She had asked Frank to bring it, knowing she would need to make a final decision soon. That night, as Noah slept fitfully and Frank dozed in a chair across the room, Felicity read through the papers again. The sum was indeed substantial enough to restore her to comfort and social standing in Boston. Harrington's card bore an address in one of the city's most prestigious neighborhoods. Everything seemed in order. And yet, as she looked from the papers to Noah's sleeping face, the decision that had seemed so difficult before suddenly became clear. Boston represented her past a life of comfort and privilege, but also of superficial relationships and societal constraints. Fairview, for all its hardships, offered something different. Genuine connections, the satisfaction of hard work, and the chance to build something meaningful with someone who saw her for who she truly was. In the early hours of the morning, Noah's fever broke. He opened his eyes, groggy but lucid, and found Felicity beside him. "Am I dreaming?" he asked hoarsely. No, she assured him, tears of relief springing to her eyes. You're awake, how do you feel? Like my head's been split open. He tried to sit up but winced, falling back against the pillows. What happened? You fell from your horse, hit your head, Frank brought the doctor and you're going to be all right. She squeezed his hand. You scared us. Noah's eyes searched her face. You stayed with me. Of course I did. A shadow of his usual smile appeared. Your aunt must be scandalized. Completely, Felicity agreed with a small laugh. But I didn't care, I needed to be here. Noah's expression grew serious. There's something I need to tell you, Felicity. I meant to say it as soon as I got back, but then this happened. He gestured vaguely at his injured head. What is it? She asked, her heart beating faster. I love you. The words were simple, direct, just like Noah himself. I think I have since that first dance. I know it's fast, and I don't expect you to feel the same yet, but I wanted you to know. Felicity's eyes filled with tears. Noah, something happened while you were gone, something I need to tell you about. Briefly, she explained about Harrington's visit and the inheritance waiting for her in Boston. The stage leaves at noon today, she finished. My last chance to go back to my old life. Noah's face had grown still as she spoke. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You should go, he said finally, his voice rough. You deserve better than the hard life out here. That's not what I'm asking, Felicity said, taking his hand again. I'm asking what you want. What I want. Noah shook his head slightly, wincing at the movement. I want you to stay, of course. I want to court you properly, to show you that I can provide for you, that we could build a good life here together. But I won't ask you to give up a fortune for me. You already did give me something, Felicity said, touching the wooden pendant she still wore. You taught me to dance to a different rhythm. You showed me that I could belong here. She leaned closer, her decision made. I love you too, Noah Nicholson, and I choose you. I choose this life. The joy that spread across Noah's face was worth more than any inheritance. Are you sure? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Instead of answering, Felicity leaned down and pressed her lips to his in a gentle kiss. It was her first, and it felt like coming home. I'm sure, she said when they parted. Now rest. You need to get better so you can teach me more dances. Noah smiled, already drifting back to sleep. Just step where I step, he murmured. You'll be fine. And she was. As the noon stage departed Fairview without her, Felicity sat beside Noah's bed, reading to him from one of the books Frank had brought from town. The inheritance papers lay forgotten on the table, no longer important. She had found something far more valuable than money. A place where she truly belonged, a man who loved her for herself, and the courage to dance to her own rhythm. By the time the first snow fell that December, Noah had fully recovered, and the Nicholson ranch had gained a new resident. They were married in the small church in Fairview, with Frank as best man and, to everyone's surprise, Martha and Herbert in attendance. It seemed that even Felicity's aunt had finally accepted her niece's choice, especially after Noah proved himself to be one of the most successful ranchers in the county. Their wedding dance was the talk of the town for months afterward, the Eastern lady and her cowboy husband moving together as if they'd been dancing all their lives. Just step where I step, Noah would still say sometimes, pulling Felicity into an impromptu dance in their kitchen or under the stars. And she always did, following his lead while adding her own grace to the movement, their two different styles blending into something unique and beautiful, just like their life together on the wild frontier. Years later, when their own daughter was old enough to attend her first dance, she came home in tears after the local boys laughed at her formal Eastern steps, the ones Felicity had taught her from her Boston days. They laughed when I tried to dance, Mama, she sobbed. Noah knelt beside her, wiping away her tears. Don't you worry, sweetheart. At the next dance, you just step where I step. They won't be laughing then, and they weren't. Just like her mother before her, the girl learned to combine the elegance of the East with the earthiness of the West, creating something entirely her own, a new dance for a new generation on the frontier. As for Felicity, she never regretted her choice. The wooden pendant Noah had carved for her remained her most treasured possession, a reminder of the day she had decided to follow her heart rather than her inheritance. Sometimes she wondered what her life would have been like if she'd gone back to Boston, but those thoughts never lingered long. For in the end, she had found the greatest fortune of all, a love that had taught her to dance to a different rhythm, and a life rich in everything that truly mattered.